The Azerbaijani civil society must be more active and united to struggle for observation of human rights, and the world community must insist on fulfillment of international commitments by the Azerbaijani authorities. This was the main idea of the international conference entitled Universal Periodic Review, Situation in Azerbaijan and Further Steps, that took place in Grand Hotel Baku on July 17, 2013. The conference has been organized by local NGOs, the Institute for Reporters' Freedom and Safety, the Society of Legal Education, the Human Rights Club, the Women for Rational Development Society, jointly with the Norwegian Human Rights Fund and the US National Endowment for Democracy. Rasul Jafarov, head of HRC, said the goal of the conference is to discuss the public campaign to achieve fulfillment of the recommendations of the Second Universal Periodic Review adopted by the UN Human Rights Committee during the discussions in Geneva on April 30, 2013. More than half of the countries of the world provided over 170 recommendations to Azerbaijan, twice as much as the first review adopted in 2009. The human rights situation in Azerbaijan is very complicated. In the past, the civil society and international community had hopes that the Azerbaijani government will implement the reforms, but events of the past years dispelled these illusions. The authorities will never implement the reforms by themselves, because fair elections, independent media and courts, freedom of assembly and strong civil society will mean end of this regime, said Intigam Aliyev, head of the SLE. As a result of total attack of the authorities on the civil society institutions in Azerbaijan, only a handful of independent NGOs and media are left, activities of political parties are limited, they are deprived of offices and their activists are put behind bars. Aliyev said that one of the preconditions of the OSCE back office in supporting NGOs projects is constructive cooperation with the government. For the Azerbaijani government, constructive cooperation means turning a blind eye to the human rights violations and claiming that reforms are going on in the country. Aliyev also criticized the recent statement of the US Ambassador Richard Morningstar, saying that he hopes fair elections will be conducted in the country. Elections cannot be fair if the country has no freedom of assembly, freedom of press is limited and political activists are suppressed, he remarked. Still, the U.S. Agency for International Development has provided $1.5 million to the pro-governmental coalition of NGOs. The UN Special Rapporteur on Freedoms of Peaceful Assembly and Association, Mayna Kiayi, addressed the participants of the conference via Skype. He planned to take part in the conference, but his visa was delayed and the visit was cancelled. Kiayi added that freedom of assembly is an important part of universal suffrage. Observation of freedom of assembly is especially important on the eve of elections. He believes that the situation of freedom of assembly in Azerbaijan on the eve of elections remains tense. The UN Special Rapporteur urged the Azerbaijani authorities to immediately register a local branch of the Norwegian Human Rights House, respect right to unions, and register other NGOs. Kiayi also criticized the rising funds for participation at the peaceful demonstrations. He said in September he will make a report about freedom of assembly in the world in the context of elections and include situation in Azerbaijan in it. Florian Erminger, head of the Geneva-based Norwegian Human Rights House, drew attention to the changing attitude of the world community to the human rights problems in Azerbaijan. The first review adopted in 2009 was weak as compared to the second review adopted in 2013. For instance, in 2009, the US did not make any comments on the freedom of assembly and expressed a desire and readiness to cooperate in this area. In the current review, the US emphasized ban on demonstrations in the Baku center. Despite a close cooperation in the oil and gas industry, the UK has also made a critical statement. Since early this year, PAC and European Parliament made very tough statements concerning Azerbaijan. OSCE also slowly joins this process. Erminger said that the Azerbaijani authorities did not say at the session in Geneva that they refused to fulfill the recommendations, and in September 2013, the government must respond to the UN Human Rights Committee concerning the commitments it's going to undertake before the elections. Emin Husseinov, director of IRFS, said the civil society of the country must demand fulfillment of recommendations of the review. We will translate the document into Azerbaijani and send to the chiefs of the police stations, judges and other officials, so that they are informed and fulfill the recommendations in practice, he said. Shahla Ismail, head of the Women for National Development Society, said that despite reduction in the number of civil society activists, the efficiency of their activity has improved. The embassies and local offices of international organizations may not react to the human rights problems efficiently, but our cooperation with the international human rights organizations helped to draw international attention to the problems in Azerbaijan, and including over 170 recommendations into the second review, proved that we must continue efforts in this direction, Ismail said. Despite of being invited, government representatives ignored the event.